Hello, and welcome back to day 2 of the Seller Teacher Company Birthday Bash. We are so excited you're here. We're having a blast celebrating with you, and we are even more excited about today's training, The Power of Sentence Level Writing. If you've been around for a little while, you probably know that here at STC, we are kind of obsessed with sentence level instruction. We talk about it all the time. We've talked about it on the podcast. We've talked about it on our YouTube channel. And if you follow us on Instagram, you've probably seen some things about it there too. Needless to say, we are never going to stop talking about it because we believe in it so very much. So we are so glad you're here, and we hope that you enjoy this training and get a lot out of it. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we really jump into the nitty-gritty of this training, let's do a quick check-in. I would love to know, how confident do you feel with sentence level instruction? 1 is I am not confident at all, and 10 is I've totally got this. And if you've been with us for a little while, we're hoping you're closer to 10 after hearing us talk about this quite a bit. But if you're not there yet, that's totally okay too. So we're looking at these comments to see how you guys are feeling. Here is our agenda for today. We are going to start off by talking about why we need to focus on sentence level instruction. Why is it important? Then we are going to look at 3 strategies that you can take back to your classroom as soon as tomorrow. And it's totally okay if you're still on summer break. You can save these for when you go back, and you could actually even use them, some of them, on the first day of school. And then we are going to end with some tips to help support your students as you start implementing these strategies. Before we look at those strategies, I do want to talk about our special deal of the day. As you know, every day we are offering an amazing deal that goes along with our daily training. Today's training, of course, is all about sentence level instruction. So we had to offer you our brand new grade level sentence writing routine. So we've had a sentence writing routine for a little while, but we have recently revamped it. We've redesigned it so that there's a specific routine for each grade level. We have aligned it with all of these strategies we're talking about today, and you'll see common themes of science, social studies, and some social emotional learning for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade integrated into these routines. So in my opinion, this is a no-brainer. You absolutely can't beat that. If you like the strategies I share, I definitely recommend grabbing this routine because it makes it all done for you, where you can just print it, teach it, and your students will be sentence level writing ninjas by the end of the year. So the link for this is right down there at the bottom. We will also share it in the caption of this video. We know that if a student cannot write a strong sentence, we certainly cannot expect them to write a strong paragraph. And without a doubt, we're not going to see strong essays or compositions from them. So we've got to get these students feeling confident and successful with sentence level writing so that they can move on to all of those other things that we know are expected in the upper grades. It also improves reading comprehension. As students get up into these upper grades, the structure of sentences within the text is going to be more complex. And the better understanding that students have of syntax and the parts of a sentence, the easier it is going to be for them to read and understand those more complex sentences. It will also, in turn, improve their fluency. If they understand the structure of a sentence, they're going to be able to read it more fluently as they come across it in those more complex texts. And really, having a strong syntax awareness, it's just crucial. It's crucial for success in all academic areas. And it's important that we start focusing on this when students are, in the primary and the upper grades, but we can even continue this in middle school and high school. So some of these strategies I'm going to share with you today, they're not just for elementary school. So if you're a middle school teacher or a high school teacher joining us, I would love for you to try these and let us know how it goes. So we are on part 2 of our quick little training. I am sharing 3 strategies that I want you to try in your classroom. The first one is called Sentence Scrambles, and This is a fun and engaging activity that is actually going to help your students understand what is needed to make a complete sentence and also to expand a sentence to make it better. So what you will do is write out a sentence on a sentence strip and cut it apart into individual words. You want to make sure that you do not include any capitalization or punctuation. You could capitalize proper nouns, of course, but you don't want the students to know which word needs to come at the beginning of the sentence. Next, you are going to talk about what words could we put together that are going to form a complete sentence. So we know we are going to need a noun phrase, which is going to tell us the who or the what of the sentence. And we are going to need a verb phrase, which is going to tell us what that who or what basically did. So our noun phrase is she, and our verb phrase is baked a chocolate cake. And you could talk about with your students, this is a complete sentence right here because we have both of those things that are needed, but we didn't use all of the cards, so we have to keep going. We pulled down the word delicious, it's an adjective, into our sentence. We know that it is describing the chocolate cake that she baked. So now we have, she baked a delicious chocolate cake. But we still have 3 words left before the party. And you would talk to your students about where could that possibly make sense with these word cards. And the great thing about this is when you actually do it with cards cut apart, your students can manipulate the pieces and move them around to see what would make sense. There are 2 possibilities with before the party. It could be this prepositional phrase, before the party. She baked a delicious chocolate cake, which is telling us when she baked that cake, or it could go at the end of the sentence. When you're first starting with scrambled sentences, it's a good idea to try to come up with a sentence that could only be unscrambled into one sentence just to eliminate confusion. But as your students get better, doing something like this where there's 2 possibilities is a great way to level up this activity. So it's great if we can look for creative ways to implement sentence level writing and instruction and practice throughout our day. So let's look at some ideas where we could do that. One way to do it is to have a scrambled sentence in your morning meeting message. So here's an example. This could be up on the board when your students come in. Good morning. Unscramble today's sentence to discover an important theme we will read about today. What's really cool about this is focusing on the read aloud that the class would be reading together later. And it is bringing in, that vocabulary. We're going to find out about the theme of the book. So lots of different things coming together with such a simple activity. Once the students unscrambled it, they would see that the theme for today's read aloud is small acts of kindness can make a big difference. You can also use scrambled sentences to activate background knowledge in your content areas. So this example is for social studies. We see we've got these words, 3 united branches, the states, government has. When the students unscrambled it, they would see the United States government has 3 branches. And since we know we're activating background knowledge, this is something they have already seen before. So they're familiar with this content and they're able to unscramble this sentence. And then whatever you're going to be talking about in social studies that day is going to relate back to this or build on it. We could also use this in reading. And what's great about this is this could be a writing about reading assignment. So it says, unscramble the sentence and then provide evidence from the text to support the statement. So here it is unscrambled. Chloe regrets not showing kindness to Maya. And then your students would write about how they can prove that from the text. So these are just 3 little ways you could incorporate this simple activity in your day. So I'd love to know in the comments, which part of your day could you try scrambled sentences? Where will you try it first? Let's move on to activity number 2, find the fragment. And I love this activity because when I think about what my students did in writing, we dealt with fragments and run-ons all the time. And also I was a teacher in the state of Texas. And we have an editing and revising portion on our state test. And I remember we gave our students a lot of practice with, trying to figure out what the fragments were and how to combine sentences, but it was like a multiple choice worksheet. We did them day after day, and it just seemed like the students really still didn't get it. And now I know that we were practicing something they had not been taught, but with Find the Fragment, they're going to learn how to find out what a fragment is and how to fix it. So with Find and Fix the Fragment, you're going to give your students 3 sentences, and really one of them is going to be a fragment. And their job is to identify the 2 complete sentences and the 1 fragment. They will put a check by the sentences and an F by the fragment. So you can see in this case, the fragment is Ariana and her friends. Next, they are going to take this fragment and turn it into a sentence. And this is pretty open-ended because they can really turn this into a sentence however they want. Again, you're going to talk about that Ariana and her friends is that noun phrase. That's telling us the who in the sentence. And so they need to add a verb phrase. What did Ariana and her friends do? Again, this is another strategy that you really want to embed in the content area. So let's look at some examples. Here is one for social studies. The fragment is riding his horse in the dark streets. And of course, this would be something that you're sharing during your unit on the American Revolution. And you would ask the students to use their knowledge about the American Revolution to turn this into a complete sentence. And here it is. Riding his horse in the dark streets, Paul Revere warned the colonists. Now, this is not going to be the exact sentence that every single student comes up with. We're going to expect to see various sentences, but what we're looking for is 2 things. Number 1, that their content knowledge is accurate, so whatever they wrote actually aligns with what they've learned in the content. And second of all, that their sentence structure is correct. You could also use it in science. So here's an example. The circuit is broken. When the switch is turned off, the circuit is broken. So this would be, a great activity during a unit on electricity. So let's do a quick check-in. Could you see yourself using Find and Fix the Fragment with your students? 1 is nope, not interested. 10 is yes, this would be so beneficial for their writing. And P.S., it's not just beneficial for writing. This is a great way to assess their content knowledge. It is really one of those strategies that you can get a lot of bang for your buck if you're able to implement it in your classroom. And our final activity is because, but, so. And this is using conjunctions to not only have your students practice with sentence level writing, but again, we are assessing their content knowledge. So this is what that looks like. You are going to provide your students with a sentence stem related either to the book you're reading or the content you're studying. For this example, I use the book Because of Winn-Dixie. I know it's something that I taught in many different grade levels, and it's also a pretty popular book. So here is my sentence stem. Opal brought Winn-Dixie home. This is what I would give to my students. And then I would ask them to turn the sentence stem into 3 separate sentences using the 3 conjunctions we talked about: because, but, and so. So Opal brought Winn-Dixie home because. So when your students do this, they're answering why. Why did this happen? Opal brought Winn-Dixie home, but, and Opal brought Winn-Dixie home, so. So with the so, of course, this is a cause and effect. And it's going to be helpful for you to explain this to your students, what these different conjunctions mean. And here's how they could possibly put these into a complete sentence. Opal brought Winn-Dixie home because she didn't want him to go to the pound. Opal brought Winn-Dixie home, but she wasn't sure if the preacher would let her keep him. And Opal brought Winn-Dixie home, so she made many new friends. You can see the power of this strategy and the deeper level thinking it's going to take for your students. They're going to have to really understand what has happened in the book in order to be able to do this activity. You can also level this activity up by providing 3 different sentence stems. So instead of using that same sentence stem and having them do the conjunctions, this is a different sentence stem for each conjunction. So I use Charlotte's Web for this example because I know that's another book that a lot of people are familiar with. So our first example is Wilbur felt lonely because Charlotte wanted to save Wilbur, but, and Templeton agreed to help Charlotte. So to turn these into sentences, a student could write something like, Wilbur felt lonely because none of the animals would play with him. Charlotte wanted to save Wilbur, but she didn't know how to change the farmer's mind. And Templeton agreed to help Charlotte, so he went to the dump to look for new words. And in this, again, like I've said with the other 2 activities, we really want to try to embed this into our content areas. That is where it is going to make such an impact. So let's look at how we could do that. Here's an example in social studies, and this is the example with 3 different sentence stems. The Constitution is important because it was written long ago, but it explains our rights. So, and for this one, I didn't give sample answers, but one thing you want to think about is what would you be looking for your students to say here? And again, they're not all going to have the exact same answers, but you should kind of think ahead. What would be an appropriate answer that would make sense with this conjunction? And here's an example with science, and this would go well with a unit on plants. A seed needs water to grow because plants need sunlight to make their own food, and pollinators help plants reproduce. So those are just 2 simple examples of using these conjunctions, this because, but, so activity, to not only work on writing more complex sentences, but also to assess content knowledge. So let me know in the comments. We just talked about 3 different strategies that you can use to help your students improve their sentence level writing. We talked about scrambled sentences, find and fix the fragment, and because, but, so. And I would love to know, which strategy do you plan to try first in your classroom? I can't wait to see these comments, and I hope you're saying you want to try all of them. Okay, let's move on to the last part of today's training, and this is just a couple of tips that are going to make sentence level instruction easier and smoother for you and your students. Number 1, and I've said this all throughout this training, you really want to embed sentence activities in content. It's okay to practice them with more general knowledge, as you're introducing them, but with the daily practice, these are best when they apply to things your students are working on. Next, it is so helpful to practice these strategies orally first. So this would include a lot of modeling from you and letting students just talk about these sentences. You can do because, but, so 100% orally, and it is so helpful and so effective before you move on to having your students write. You want to ensure that your students have the necessary background knowledge to complete the activity. So I'm not going to give my students a because, but, so writing activity about plants if that is not a unit that we've covered before. Of course, if it's something really simple that, should be background knowledge they have, that might be okay. But if it's very specific and it's based on, 4th grade skills that you haven't touched on yet, you wouldn't expect your students to be able to write about that. You want them to have plenty of knowledge and be really confident in their knowledge of whatever it is that you are embedding into this sentence level instruction. You want to provide feedback and guidance. So this is not just an activity you're going to put out in the morning, for morning work, have them work on it, put it away, and never talk about it again. Because simply doing the activities without any instruction, without any feedback, is not going to be helpful for the students. They're not going to get better. They're not going to improve their sentence level writing. So it's definitely a process, and it's going to take a lot of back and forth between you and your students working together. And finally, keep practicing. So this is another thing. We are not going to introduce Find and Fix the Fragment, work on it for 3 weeks and say, okay, my students have mastered this. I can move on to the next sentence level activity. All of these activities are really designed to just keep using over and over and over again through all of the grade levels. And the way that you can differentiate these activities and make them more rigorous is to use more rigorous content. So the strategies aren't necessarily going to change. It's going to be the content that they're writing about that's going to be more difficult. So we've talked about these 3 strategies. We've talked about some tips to make implementation a little bit easier. So now let's do another check-in. At the very beginning of the training, we rated ourselves, how confident do you feel with sentence level instruction? Are you a 1? Are you a 10? I would love to know how you're feeling now. And hopefully you feel a little more confident. You're ready to take these strategies and try them in your classroom. And before I sign off and let you guys go for the day, I want to remind you about our sentence writing routine that is our special deal for the day. If you liked the strategies that I just shared, then you are definitely going to want to get this special routine. It has everything that I just talked about, and it's already done for you. So you don't have to think about how you could write, these sentence stems, how you could help your students practice with scrambled sentences. This routine will already be done for you. And if you really want to try these strategies in the content areas, using this routine to teach your students these different strategies will help make that so much easier. So remember, if you want to grab this special deal, it is stellarteacher.com/SWR. We hope you're able to grab these routines and use them in your classroom. We know that we have heard from so many teachers who've used our old sentence writing routine that they have seen amazing improvement, not only in their students' everyday writing, but even on those revision and editing scores on standardized tests. So we know that it's proven, we know that it's helpful, and of course, we want to make sentence level instruction as easy as possible for you. So thank you again so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please drop them down in the comments, and myself and the rest of the team will be in there answering them for you. Have an amazing day and an amazing rest of your summer.